Steve Coates, of course, the Flyers radio analyst, and we hear him and Tim Saunders each and every night on the Flyers broadcasts. And, boy, a lot of good things to talk about, Coatesy, as the Flyers on a roll. They've extended their streak now to double digits. And speaking of numbers, I see 46 and partly cloudy in Dallas compared to 21 and winds out of the west at 18 miles an hour. So I think you're winning the battle. Plus, it's going to be in the 70s for the game on Saturday. So I think you're winning the weather battle. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Peter. You just caught me perfectly. I just got off the bus, walked into the hotel, and ready to talk Flyers hockey. And I heard you talk about last night and what's going on with the Flyers, and it's kind of special right now. It's exciting. And the team has kind of an aura about it right now that, you know, they just have this confidence level right now that's just really scary. So it's kind of been a lot of fun on this trip so far.
They're getting contributions from all kinds of guys, and you and I talked off the air, but I'll ask you on the air. If you could describe the sort of chaos and frenzy that took place last night. Scott and I were talking about it earlier, but, you know, where Belmar didn't have a stick, and then the stick got transferred from here to there, and it was a righty and a lefty. Take us through that, because that's sort of the game within the game.
Well, it was, the Colorado Avalanche had pulled their goaltender. Flyers were really back on their heels in the last 5 minutes of that hockey game. Steve Mason came up with some outstanding saves, got a lot of luck. There was a couple of shots that looked like they're going to go into a wide open net on a redirection, and that didn't happen. But in the commotion with Colorado carrying the play, there was a stick broken, and Belmar was without a stick. And so Wayne Simmons, understanding that Belmar is more of an important element defensively because he's playing a lot farther, or as far as deep, he gave him his stick. Well, at the end of that shift, those guys were just absolutely gassed. I mean, they were just kind of hanging on, and the puck came to Belmar, but Belmar, he's a left-hand shot, and Simmons is right-handed, so he tried to move that puck out, and it didn't go very well. In fact, I joked with him today. I said, "Did you practice doing right-hand shots today?" Because it just didn't work out. They kept it in, got about 4 more shots after that, but we got lucky and got out of there with a win. But that just shows you the mentality right now of this team and the support. I mean, Jake Voracek goes after Landeskog absolutely annihilates Raffle in the neutral zone. And, you know, you can take a look at it in 2 different ways of whether it was a good hit or a bad hit. And looking at it in retrospect, I think it was a good hit. The timing of it was just so close to being an interference call. But just the whole mentality of the hockey club right now is one of support, one of confidence, and one of, like, you know, we're going to just go out and do what we have to do to win.
Flyers analyst Steve Coates with us here on the radio. Old-time hockey, you seem to mention there is, you're right, Jake Voracek dropped the gloves last night, but when you see names like Lubimov, Roman Lubimov played an unbelievable game last night, I thought, and then Braden Shen, who lit a fire under his butt. I mean, different guys contributing every night.
Well, when you have that, you know, first of all, I think we should have a new trophy for the find of the year. And the find this year for the Philadelphia Flyers has been Lubimov. I mean, he came out of 6 years of playing pro hockey in Russia, and so he's not a rookie. So it's not new to him, but he's a different type of player than most Russians are. Most Russians are fancy dance, highly skilled. Well, this guy is robust in the way he plays. As far as he's gritty, he takes the body. But the one thing that Dave Hextall loves about him is that he knows how to play the game at both ends of the ice. He really knows where he's going. So that's half the battle. And then you add the skill level, and he had a couple of real good shots, the one going in last night. So along with Belmar and Van de Velde, we might have found a new Ryan White, who had such a great success on that right side with Belmar and Van de Velde. Well, that fourth line might be coming back again with some success. And it might actually be the third line now.
Coatsy, when you look at what happened last night, you mentioned it earlier with the Landeskog hit that Voracek came back in and took to him and went after him with the fight. This team we've heard is so close-knit. The chemistry is great. The locker room is unbelievable. When Voracek does that, obviously doesn't hesitate at all, goes to stand up for his teammate, how much does that help in the locker room? And then, you know, each of those guys really do have their backs.
Well, I think that when you have, it's not the kind of thing you want one of your superstars doing, but it sure comes an awful long way when it's seen by, especially our younger group. We got a young group here now with Lubimov and Konechny, Cousins, Stolars. So that rubs off on every one of them. The older players, they understand that Jake's like that. But for the younger players to see that happening and the Gossip Bears of this world, it just brings everybody closer together. And they understand also, these young kids, they don't come up like that. They don't get taught, well, you got to go out and fight somebody if they go after your guy. That's just not happening in a lot of venues. So all of a sudden they see this and they understand that they have to do that. So it's kind of an education, but at the same time, it brings them closer together.
Steve Coates with us, Flyers radio analyst, as we talk Flyers and their win streak. During this streak, they've won 6 of their 10 games by 1 goal. If you take out the empty net goals, 8 of their 10 wins are by 1 goal. It is the longest win streak, 10 games since 1985. And Steve Mason right in the middle of that, Coatesy. Steve Mason, a big reason for that. The first Flyers goalie to win 8 straight starts since Ron Hextall won 9 in a row in 96, 97. How do you sum up the job that Steve Mason is doing right now?
Well, I think that, Pete, that Steve Mason has been one of the keys, obviously. I mean, he might have been the ringleader when you think about turning this around and moving in the right direction. And we all thought, it happened last year too when Neuvert went down with the injury. It was a matter of Mason carrying the load. He did a great job. So I think he's one of those goaltenders that thrives on the work and having no pressure of somebody going to take his job behind him. And is that a bad thing? No, as long as you get the goaltender to stand on his head and do what he's doing, especially, coming up with the big save when you have to. And the rhythm of the game is so important. When, you're in a tough game, like you mentioned about the 1-goal games. Well, you're in a 1-goal game, you need your goaltender to come up with that big save, and he's done that. He's really done a great job in doing that. So, taking a look at the year so far, can you imagine if we had real good goaltending at the beginning of the year because we were scoring goals then? So, never too late, I guess.
Coach, in my experience, it seems like hockey players seem to be the most fun of the professional athletes, the most laid back at times when they can. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. What's it been like traveling with a team that's hot like this? What was the flight like today down to Dallas? How are they handling all this? Because they don't play again now in Dallas until Saturday afternoon.
Well, they got on the, they went and practiced this morning, and then, the card games go right away as soon as they get on the plane. And, everybody has, it's hard to describe. It's not like a raucous group. I mean, they have their own area in the middle of the plane, 24 seats, all 24 recliners that, so they can stretch right out. And then management's all in the front, and then we're in the back of the plane, all the broadcasters and the trainers and the public relations guys. So it's a big plane, so you don't really get to interact with them. But, you see Konechny and Cousins sit together, and they have a lot of fun playing, I guess, video games and things like that. They have fun, they lay back. But most of the guys just sit there. They got movies and things like that they have, and the poker games continue on.
And I'll point out, Steve Coates is with us, the Flyers radio analyst. I'll point out to you, Scott Grayson, and all our listeners that sometimes people say, oh, we missed Coates's Corner. Guess what? You can go to the Flyers website and you can watch Coates's Corners because they put them up regularly. And one of the ones he did earlier this season, which was phenomenal, Steve Coates, was when they went to Toronto and he took you behind the scenes and you got to see the plane and you got to see what takes place at the morning skate. So always check out those Coates's Corners on flyers.nhl.com. So Steve Coates with us. Coatesy, I'm seeing on the Genie Box, I love to reference my Genie Box, that there are 2 books that are available out for the holidays, and one of them is Keith the Thief, and the other is Flyers at 50. Do you know anything about both of these books, or at least about the subjects of the books, and should those be stocking stuffers for everyone?
What was the first one, Pete?
Keith the Thief. That is the one book that is apparently lovingly written by Blake Allen.
Oh, wow. I didn't know anything about that. I would love to read that.
Okay, I know what to get you for Christmas. Act surprised. Keith the Thief, that's written by Blake Allen, and the other one is by Jay Greenberg. Of course, you know Jay Greenberg. That's Flyers at 50, and that has basically everything that's happened in the franchise's history over 50 years.
Yeah, it is a huge book. Huge. And I'm not talking about like it's a big book. And anything you want to know about the Philadelphia Flyers in its 50 years is all in there. I'm telling you right now, it's a great reference book. I've had an opportunity to just kind of browse through it. He didn't miss a thing. He did a great job with it. And listening to you talk about Keith the Thief, that's, that's a great, I never heard of that. That's absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to being able to grab that because Keith was a really good general manager. I used to call him my travel agent because he was always sending me somewhere in the minors.
I'll give you a little anecdote out of that book just to whet your appetite as we wrap up with Steve Coates in the foreword. And by the way, this is probably one of the last forewords for any book that Mr. Snyder wrote. He said a few years after the Flyers traded enforcer Dave Schultz, I was pushing to bring Davey back until finally Keith exploded on Mr. Snyder and said, you want him so goddamn badly, I'll go get him for you. And to me, that said, you're the owner, but this is against my better judgment. Snyder backed down. Schultz wasn't brought back. But in that book, Snyder said because of the colorful and talented teams that Allen built as GM, the Flyers have fans everywhere, a fact reflected by how much orange you see in the stands when the team is on the road. We saw orange last night at the Pepsi Center in Denver. I'm sure we'll see orange again in Dallas when they play the Stars on Saturday. Blake Allen writes that book. It is called Keith the Thief, and we'll look for that. And Coates, you just act surprised when I have that in your stocking for you on Christmas morn, okay?
Well, thank you very much, Santa Pete.
Thank you, Coatesy Claus. I love talking to you, pal. Good luck with the rest of the road trip. Of course, Steve Coates and the Philadelphia Flyers, they are on the road right now. They play in Dallas on Saturday. They've got 10 straight wins. Dallas on Saturday, home games on Monday against Nashville, and then Wednesday against Washington. Safe travels to you, Coatesy, and thanks for joining us, bud.
My pleasure, Peter. And listen, just so you brought up Coates's Corner, Santa Coatesy comes back in the next couple of days. So take a look.
I'll be clicking on that Genie box a lot. Steve Coates with us, the Flyers radio analyst.